Now, since we started our soft foot and finished it, we're now going to do the final check on soft foot. First off, go through and again in a diagonal pattern, tighten all 4 bolts. This time you need a pair of wrenches, and usually go turn by turn. From this bolt, go diagonally across the motor to the next bolt to tighten down, ensuring as much of a torque pattern as possible. And catch everything, so some of it's by feel underneath. It should be fairly tightened down, motor's not going anywhere. And for the moment, all things look good. Now for the final checkout, for final soft foot indication, we need something that's a little bit more precise. And for this, we normally use a dial indicator. This is a good dial indicator. Good example of one. The dial, which we can turn to straighten out to line up for 0 or not. On the back side, there's a little push. Push it in. And as I push it, notice that the dial spins. That's to indicate movement. In this case, this is basically down to the 1,000th of an inch. And of course, it's adjustable. And to keep this in place, we add to it a magnetic iron base, which we put the dial indicator upon. And there's a button on the back, which we push. We push in the button, and we can see that it turns on a magnet. If we push the front of it, it turns off the magnet, allowing the piece to drop. So you usually turn on the magnet, and that forms a good, comfortable base. Now what we're going to do here is to loosen. For checking soft foot on this corner, we will loosen this bolt, leave the other 3 tight, and watch how much this corner rises. If it rises less than 10,000ths of an inch, it's considered to be okay, and we do this for each in turn of the other 4 corners. So I'm going to demonstrate on this one corner, and you can go ahead and do the rest of the 3 for checking the full final soft foot. But for this one, to show you how we align things, first off, recognize the bottom is what's going to measure against here. So in ordinarily to line up against it, we leave a lever arm down. We loosen these. There's basically turn screws here. We loosen them up to be able to slide in and out. And we bring this to just about tabletop space. Tighten, tighten. So if we bring this to rest on top of the plate, it actually pushes in slightly. Not all the way, because we do want it to be able to make a revolution, part of a revolution through. Ideally, we would turn around 50 mils, or halfway around the dial. We put this down. And for that, we'll loosen up a little bit there until we get that. So I push level, push down slightly. When I see we're close to 50 on the dial, then I'll tighten, tighten. And if I'm around right now, 60 is close enough to measure any real deflection here that I'm looking for. Normally put this dial right at the corner. Right at the corner. And I will turn this metal face. You see it turns the numbers on here. You might not be able to see it on your camera. But I'll turn it so that this needle lines up with the 0. It's the outer rim here. It is very touchy. Goes with the 0. And at this point, the next step to do is to loosen that particular bolt. And watch what happens. So I need 2 wrenches, one up top, one on the bottom, and I carefully loosen. Usually it's best at this point to hold the top head and loosen from underneath. And as I loosen, the needle moves slightly to the right, which is what I expect, because I expect to see the deflection here loosen. And the bolt here now is fairly loose. You can see that on camera. And it's moved now to a spot that I read here as a 0 and 2 notches past it, or basically 0.02 of an inch. At 0.02 of an inch movement, that means any softfoot deflection here is 0.02 of an inch. That's well within the 0.10 of an inch called for as far as softfoot. So I consider this to be good enough. I can retighten the bolt. And I go ahead and do that. And it should bring it in to just as soon as I find the wrench that I dropped. And so I go ahead and retighten the bolt, wrench on top, wrench underneath, and as I retighten, I'll notice that the dial indicator will move, the needle will move back to the 0 position, which is just as I would expect. That checks out softfoot for this corner. Now we would just need to do this to move this to each of the 4 corners, doing the exact same thing. Move the dial indicator to the corner, 0 it like we did, loosen the bolt, and I recommend just keep the bolt head still and loosen from underneath until it's just about finger tight. Watch the dial movement, make sure it does not go past the 10. If it doesn't, that's good. Tighten back up. It should go back to 0, and do that for the other 3 corners. That would take care of final softfoot.